My world collapsed in the single second my daughter's scream tore through the neighborhood. I rushed outside and froze. The sight burned itself into my memory forever. My 6-year-old little girl was on the ground, clutching her face, her skin bubbling as steam rose into the cold afternoon air. And standing above her, smirking like she'd won something, was HOA Karen in her royal blue uniform with its golden collar glinting in the sun. An empty steel kettle dangled from her hand, a few droplets of boiling water still sizzling on the pavement. "I warned her," Karen said coldly. "Kids aren't allowed to play outside. This is my neighborhood." Her laughter echoed as my daughter cried in my arms, and I felt something inside me snap. Because this wasn't an accident, this was deliberate. And what happened after this moment, nobody in our community was prepared for. Before I take you deeper into this nightmare, I want to connect with you, because stories like this deserve to be heard everywhere. Which city are you watching from? Just drop your city in the comments so I know where my supporters are tuning in from. And before we continue, please subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me bring real stories, real pain, and real justice to light. Now, let me tell you exactly how everything spiraled out of control. My daughter Lily is only 6, the softest, sweetest little girl you could meet. She loves chalk drawings, blowing bubbles, and making tiny hopscotch squares on the sidewalk. She wasn't loud, she wasn't messy, she was simply a child being a child. But in our neighborhood, innocence was a crime according to one person, HOA Karen, the woman who treated the streets like her personal kingdom. Every day she patrolled in her royal blue HOA uniform with golden trims, scanning every yard like she was inspecting soldiers. For months, she warned us, kids shouldn't be outside. It lowers the neighborhood standards. I ignored her because who in their right mind believes a grown woman could actually hate the sound of a child laughing? Still, the tension kept building, her glares, her complaints, her recordings. But nothing prepared me for the moment I heard Lily's scream. It wasn't the normal cry of a child who tripped or got scared. It was sharp, piercing, full of terror, the kind of scream that freezes a parent's heart. I dropped everything and ran outside, not knowing that in the next few seconds, my life would change forever. Lily had been having one of her happiest afternoons in weeks, the kind where her laughter felt like sunlight warming every corner of our home. She sat cross-legged on the sidewalk, drawing bright pink and yellow flowers with her chalk, humming a little tune under her breath as tiny bubbles floated around her, catching the golden glare of the late afternoon sun. I remember watching her through the living room window for a moment, feeling grateful she was finally playing outside without fear. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that at that same exact moment, HOA Karen was watching too, standing stiffly behind her own window across the street, her royal blue HOA uniform pressed rigidly against her frame, her golden yellow collar almost glowing under the light. Her eyes were narrow, locked onto my child like Lily was committing a crime instead of simply being 6 years old. I saw a quick movement, Karen stepping away from the window, but I thought nothing of it. Until later, when everything clicked together, and I realized she hadn't stepped away, she had gone to set her plan in motion. Lily continued drawing, oblivious to the danger. She stood up, skipped a little, blew another bubble, and clapped as it popped. And then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Karen outside her door. She was moving strangely fast for someone who usually walked like she owned the pavement, her hand gripping a large stainless steel kettle as steam escaped from its spout. At first, I thought she was simply pouring something into her yard, maybe water for her plants. But then she lifted it, no hesitation, no second thoughts, and began walking directly toward Lily. My heart skipped, but I still hadn't processed the horror that was about to unfold. Lily turned slightly, her back facing Karen, still lost in her world of chalk and bubbles. And then it happened in one horrifying flash, the attack that would replay in my mind again and again like a nightmare on repeat. Karen stepped closer, leaned forward, and with a cold, twisted smirk spreading across her face, she threw the boiling water straight onto my daughter's head, shoulders, and tiny arms. The sound Lily made, it wasn't a cry, it wasn't a scream, it was something raw, primal, a pain-filled tearing of sound that sliced through the entire neighborhood. Her chalk fell from her hand as she collapsed onto the concrete, clutching her face, her skin turning red, then blistering almost instantly as steam rose from her clothes. I froze for a microsecond, my brain refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. And then instinct took over. I sprinted out the door so fast I don't even remember pushing it open. All I remember is Lily's trembling hands reaching for me and Karen standing over her with the empty kettle dangling casually from her fingers. "I warned her," Karen said calmly, as if she had just corrected a minor rule violation. "Kids playing outside is against HOA sanitation codes." She violated the rules. Her voice was cold. Emotionless. Almost proud. My hands shook as I scooped Lily off the burning pavement, her little body quivering against my chest. Her skin was blistering, red patches already forming, her cries muffled as she pressed her face into my shirt. "What is wrong with you?" I yelled at Karen, but she shrugged like she had done nothing more than swat a fly. "This neighborhood has standards," she snapped. "If you people don't follow them, I will enforce them myself." Then she actually laughed, as my daughter whimpered in unimaginable pain. There was no time to argue. I rushed Lily into the house, laying her carefully on the couch, trying not to touch her burns, my hands trembling so violently I could barely grab my phone. Her clothes were soaked and steaming, every breath she took was shaky and shallow. I dialed 911 while Lily cried, "Daddy, it hurts, make it stop," and hearing those words nearly broke me. The dispatcher kept asking questions. "Is she conscious? How severe are the burns? Is there any swelling?" But all I could say was, "She's burning, my baby is burning, please hurry." I tore open the freezer to grab cold packs, but the operator stopped me. "Don't use ice, it can worsen the burn. Cool water only." My hands fumbled as I grabbed a bowl of cool water, gently dabbing around her arms while trying not to make the pain worse. Every touch made her flinch and sob. I kept whispering, "It's okay, Lily, you're safe now. I'm here," even though I knew nothing was okay. Outside, through the window, Karen still stood on the sidewalk, her arms crossed, her face twisted into a satisfied smirk like she believed she had done the neighborhood a favor. Neighbors began peeking from their windows, whispering, confused, some recording the chaos, but no one dared approach Karen. It was like she had become a storm everyone feared. The sirens grew louder in the distance, and I held Lily close, trying not to cry because she needed me to be strong. But inside, I was already broken. Nothing would ever be the same again. This wasn't a simple act of anger. It wasn't an argument gone wrong. This was an intentional, premeditated attack on a child, a 6-year-old doing nothing more than drawing flowers on the ground. And as the paramedics rushed through the door moments later, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this fight had only just begun. The wail of the ambulance siren grew louder until it filled every corner of our street, bouncing off the houses like a warning bell for what our lives had just become. The paramedics rushed into the living room the second I opened the door, their faces tightening the moment they saw Lily's blistered skin and her trembling little hands curled toward her chest. They worked quickly but gently, placing cool sterile cloths across her burns, speaking in calm voices even though their eyes betrayed the urgency of the situation. "Second-degree burns, possibly third," one whispered to the other, and my heart sank so violently I felt my knees almost collapse beneath me. Lily whimpered, her breaths shallow, her words barely forming. "Daddy, hurts," each syllable cut through me like a blade. As the paramedics prepared her for transport, I heard shouting outside, voices rising, neighbors gathering, confusion spreading like wildfire. And then I heard her. Karen. She stood in the center of a small crowd, her royal blue HOA uniform crisp and spotless, her golden collar gleaming in the sunlight, her hands dramatically waving in the air as she spoke loud enough for the whole street to hear. "She attacked me," she declared theatrically, pointing toward my house. The child threw something at me, boiling water splashed on her by accident. My jaw clenched so tight I felt pain shoot into my temples. She was twisting everything. Lying so easily it made my stomach turn. A few neighbors, those who always feared her HOA authority, nodded nervously as if they had no choice but to believe her version. Others looked uneasy, glancing between her and the paramedics with doubt in their eyes. One old man whisper asked, "Why would a child attack an adult?" But Karen cut him off sharply with, "Because that family has never respected my rules." As I carried Lily outside on the stretcher alongside the paramedics, Karen lifted her phone and immediately began recording, capturing every angle as if she were building evidence for a case she was fabricating in real time. "See," she said loudly into her camera. "This is what happens when parents don't control their kids." My blood boiled hotter than the water she had thrown at my daughter, but I had no time to confront her because Lily needed me. The paramedics placed her gently into the ambulance, securing her with straps as she cried softly, her tiny voice almost fading. I climbed inside with her, my hands still trembling as I stroked her hair, whispering, "I'm right here, baby. I'm not going anywhere." The doors slammed shut, and the ambulance jolted forward, leaving behind the chaos, but not the horror. The ride felt like a blur, red lights flashing across my reflection in the window, the paramedic monitoring Lily's vitals, the oxygen mask covering half her face, her eyes fluttering as she fought against pain her small body should never have known. I kept asking the same question again and again, "Is she going to be okay?" And though the paramedic reassured me with practiced calmness, I could hear the worry under her breath. When we arrived at the hospital, nurses rushed Lily directly to the burn unit, their shoes squeaking against the polished white floors as they moved with the urgency of people who knew every second mattered. I reached the double doors before a nurse gently blocked me, saying, "We need to stabilize her first, sir. Please wait here." Those words shattered me. I sank onto a cold plastic chair outside the unit, my hands covering my face, tears finally breaking through. I felt helpless, useless, broken. My little girl was burning because of a neighbor who believed she had power over everyone. 10 minutes later, though it felt like hours, a doctor approached me with a soft but serious expression. "Your daughter has severe burns," he said. "We're treating them aggressively, but we need to monitor her closely for shock and infection." His voice was steady, but the weight of his words punched through my chest. I nodded, barely hearing him. I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my mind, Karen's smirk, the boiling water cascading over Lily's shoulders, the steam rising from her skin. And as if the universe wanted to pour salt in my wounds, my phone buzzed with notifications. Neighbors were texting me screenshots and voice messages. Karen had gone home and begun posting videos claiming she was the victim, that Lily threw something at her, that the boiling water fell by accident, and the worst part, the HOA board president had already commented under her post siding with her story, "We will investigate the parents for negligence." Negligence. Us. I felt rage so deep it almost suffocated me. I stood up, pacing the hallway, trying to control the storm inside me. A nurse walked by, offering a sympathetic look as she overheard me whisper, "She attacked my daughter, she hurt her on purpose." My phone buzzed again. Another neighbor. This time a video. A shaky recording of Karen standing proudly on her porch telling the crowd, "They're dangerous people. They let their child run wild." I had to defend myself. Defend herself? Against a 6-year-old drawing flowers? Something inside me hardened then. A line snapped. A decision formed like steel in my chest. I wiped my face, straightened my back, and whispered to myself, "No more." If Karen wanted a war, she was about to get one. Because I wasn't just a terrified parent anymore, now I was a parent with nothing left to lose. And I knew one thing with absolute clarity, I would expose her lies, bring every truth to light, and make sure she never hurt another child again. Not in this neighborhood. Not anywhere. The moment Lily was taken into treatment, the hospital hallway became my battlefield, but I never expected the neighborhood to erupt into chaos at the exact same time. While I sat there shaking, scrolling through Karen's lies spreading like poison, something strange began happening. Message after message started popping up from neighbors who had stayed silent for months. The first was from Mrs. Jenkins across the street, who whispered in a voice note, "I saw everything, but I was scared of her." Then a young mom named Rachel sent me a text saying, "I have footage from my son's bedroom window camera. You need to see this." For the first time since the attack, I felt a flicker of hope. Within minutes, my phone vibrated again, a video file. My hands trembled as I tapped it open, and what I saw made my heart pound so loudly I could hear it echo in my ears. The footage showed Lily sitting on the sidewalk drawing, the sunlight warm on her little shoulders. Across the street, Karen emerged from her house in her rigid royal blue HOA uniform with that golden collar shining like a badge she believed gave her divine authority. She wasn't watering plants. She wasn't carrying something accidentally. No, she walked straight toward Lily with that steaming kettle, every step purposeful. She raised her arm. Paused. Then tilted the kettle forward, pouring the boiling water directly onto my daughter without a second of hesitation. There was no provocation. No object thrown. No self-defense. It was a cold-blooded act. And worst of all, when Lily collapsed screaming, the video caught Karen smirking. I felt my stomach twist. The video left no room for doubt. Karen attacked a child intentionally. And she wasn't just a villain, she was a monster who felt proud of what she had done. Before I could catch my breath, more messages rolled in. She harassed my kids too. She fined me $200 for sidewalk chalk. She threatened to tow my car even though it was parked legally. Each confession landed like a blow, revealing Karen had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years, but everyone was too afraid of HOA retaliation to speak. One neighbor admitted that the HOA president, Mr. Buckley, always protected Karen because she brought in the most fines, which the HOA profited from. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces snapped together. They weren't just petty tyrants. They were corrupt. Their power came from keeping everyone scared. I clenched my phone tightly, anger building like a storm in my chest. Then my phone dinged again. This time it was a message from an unknown number. "You don't know me, but I know everything the HOA has covered up. Meet me when your daughter stabilizes. Bring your evidence." My heart raced. Who was this? A whistleblower? A neighbor living in the shadows of Karen's tyranny? I didn't know, but I saved the message. As I walked back and forth outside Lily's door, another video came in, this time from a teenager named Mia who lived diagonally across from us. She had caught the entire argument after the attack. The footage showed Karen holding the empty kettle and screaming to the neighbors, "She did this to herself. I warned them. I warned all of you." The eerie part was her expression, wild, paranoid, desperate to rewrite reality while the kettle still dripped scalding water. And when the camera zoomed in, her royal blue sleeves were splattered with droplets of boiling water, not from an accident, but from her own act of throwing it forcefully. Mia added a message, "My mom didn't want me to send this. She's scared of HOA fines." But I couldn't stay quiet. "Your daughter didn't deserve this." I whispered, "Thank you," even though she couldn't hear me. Then the neighborhood group chat exploded, over 100 messages in minutes. Some were Karen's loyal followers insisting she was innocent. But more, this time far more, were furious parents who had stayed silent too long. "I'm done being scared," one said. She threatened to report my autistic son for being noisy even though he was inside the house. Another wrote, "Karen broke my daughter's scooter last year and claimed it was illegal sidewalk equipment. I didn't report her because HOA said she was acting within her authority." Stories poured in. Some heartbreaking. Some infuriating. Some dangerous. The HOA board had been hiding Karen's behavior for years, burying complaints, covering up her threats, and labeling anyone who spoke up as problem residents. It had been a cycle of abuse operating under the polished mask of community standards. And now, because she had finally crossed a line so horrifying it shook the whole neighborhood, the truth was spilling out. I saved every message. Every screenshot. Every voice note. Every video. I created a folder labeled Karen Files and backed everything up twice. My hands shook, not with fear anymore, but with determination. I would expose every single one of them. Then, I received the message that changed everything. It came from a man named Daniel who lived a few houses down, a quiet man nobody ever noticed. He wrote, "I used to work with HOAs legally. I know for a fact they've been hiding complaints about Karen. I have documents. Original dates. Emails. Even a police report she made disappear." My breath caught. I also know she was removed from an HOA in another city for excessive force and child endangerment. They covered it up when she moved here. I read the message 3 times, each word slamming into me harder than the last. Karen wasn't just unstable. She was a repeat offender. And she had been protected, intentionally, by the same HOA board that now dared to accuse us of negligence. As I stood there, overwhelmed yet burning with resolve, Daniel sent one final message: "If you want justice, come see me. It's time." I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and whispered to myself, "This ends now." Because with the community rising, the evidence stacking up, and the truth finally unfolding, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. I was going to destroy Karen's fabricated world piece by piece, and expose every secret she and the HOA thought they had buried forever. The moment the police received the witness videos and the first set of statements from neighbors, everything changed: the tone, the urgency, the seriousness on every officer's face. What had started as a neighbor dispute instantly escalated into a criminal investigation, and for the first time since the attack, I felt like the ground beneath Karen's feet was finally cracking. Detectives arrived at the neighborhood within hours, moving with purpose, cameras ready, notebooks in hand. The first thing they did was walk over to Karen's house, where she stood on her porch in her royal blue HOA uniform, arms crossed, chin raised like she was greeting guests instead of the law. The golden collar on her shirt gleamed in the morning sun as if she believed it was her badge of authority. "I already told everyone," she said loudly as the detectives approached her. "The child splashed herself. I defended myself." The lead detective, a calm but visibly unimpressed woman named Detective Harris, didn't even blink. "Ma'am, we'll need your full statement," she said. Karen's eyes narrowed, but she followed them inside her house, looking irritated that the world wasn't bending to her lies anymore. I watched from across the street with several neighbors who had gathered, some still trembling with nerves, others burning with anger. Inside, the detectives asked Karen to recount the events step by step. She spoke with rehearsed confidence. "The child threw something at me. I flinched. The water spilled. It was an accident." But Detective Harris simply nodded and said, "We have video evidence. Multiple angles." Karen froze, just for a second, but it was enough to give the detectives their first crack in her armor. "People lie," Karen spat. "They're all against me. I run this community because nobody else has standards." Her voice grew hostile, defensive, erratic, and the detectives exchanged glances. Then they asked, "Where is the kettle you used?" Karen hesitated. "I washed it. It's clean," she said coldly. But the detectives insisted, and she reluctantly brought it out, a polished steel kettle that was suspiciously spotless. Forensic officers took it immediately, placing it into an evidence bag. "Why is it cleaned so thoroughly?" one asked. Karen lifted her chin proudly. "Because I'm not dirty." But everyone watching knew she cleaned it because she was trying to destroy evidence. Meanwhile, at the same moment, another team of officers was interviewing neighbors. Story after story revealed the same pattern: harassment, threats, illegal fines, intimidation. A young mother described how Karen once followed her 8-year-old son for blocks, shouting at him for walking too loudly. An elderly couple recalled how Karen screamed at their granddaughter for drawing a unicorn on the driveway with chalk. One neighbor burst into tears explaining how Karen had banged on her door at 11 p.m. because her toddler had dropped a toy on the floor. And then the most chilling testimony came from down the street, from a father whose autistic child had been targeted. "She told me kids with disabilities shouldn't live here," he said, his voice shaking. "She wanted a silent neighborhood. A quiet neighborhood. A child-free neighborhood." That sentence made every detective pause. It aligned with something else they had discovered, an email thread recovered from HOA records. One where Karen wrote to the HOA president, "Children are loud, dirty, and ruin neighborhoods. I will make this community peaceful again, even if I have to enforce it myself." The HOA president, Mr. Buckley, had replied, "Handle it quietly. We don't want complaints piling up." When detectives confronted him with the recovered emails, his face fell apart. He stuttered, fumbled, sweat pooling at the collar of his shirt. I didn't mean anything illegal," he insisted. But the detectives ignored him, focusing on the digital timestamps. Those messages were sent weeks before the attack. It meant the assault on my daughter wasn't a sudden rage, it was part of a pattern. A mission. A vendetta against children. And then came the biggest bombshell. The mysterious neighbor, Daniel, the one who claimed he had documents, finally stepped forward and gave the detectives a folder thicker than a dictionary. Inside were printed emails, HOA complaint logs, copies of police reports, and even a document marked "restricted" from Karen's previous HOA in another state. It revealed she had been forcibly removed from her former neighborhood for excessive force against minors and escalatory confrontation with parents. She had thrown cleaning chemicals at a teenager for skateboarding. She had physically grabbed a 5-year-old's arm for stepping on her grass. She had chased children with a rake for making noise near her bushes. She wasn't just controlling, she was unhinged. A repeat offender. A danger. And she had been allowed to move here without any restrictions because her previous HOA board covered it up to avoid lawsuits. Detectives now saw everything clearly. Karen didn't just dislike children, she wanted to eliminate them from her environment. She called kids problems, noise pollution, property value threats, and even in her interviews, she slipped, muttering, "This neighborhood was perfect before they moved here with that loud little brat." Detective Harris slammed her pen down at that, her voice sharp. "She's 6 years old. She was drawing flowers. And you poured boiling water on her." Karen's face twitched, her composure finally cracking. "Because she wouldn't stop. None of them ever stop," she snapped. "Children make this place unbearable. Someone has to take control." Those words echoed through the room like a confession. The detectives stepped outside, their faces grave, their whispers urgent. Then I saw Detective Harris approach me with a look that told me everything before she even spoke. "We're preparing an arrest warrant," she said. "Based on the evidence, this was premeditated assault with a deadly liquid, child endangerment, intentional harm, and attempted grievous injury. She's going to jail." For the first time since the attack, my chest loosened, but only slightly. I looked toward the house where Karen stood watching through her blinds, her royal blue uniform still crisp, her face twisted with anger, not fear, not remorse, just pure hatred. She had no idea the world around her was collapsing. She had no idea her lies had shattered. She had no idea her mask had fallen. The investigation wasn't just revealing the truth, it was pulling Karen's entire empire of cruelty apart, piece by piece, exposing every dark motive she thought she had buried. And as the detectives walked back into her house with the warrant paperwork in hand, I whispered under my breath, "This is only the beginning." Because justice was coming, and this time, she couldn't escape it, just when I thought the investigation had revealed everything, that Karen's cruelty stood alone like a rotten tree in the middle of our peaceful neighborhood. The real shock slammed into me like a punch to the chest. She hadn't acted alone. The deeper detectives dug, the more cracks appeared in the HOA's tidy facade, and one crack in particular exposed the twist that none of us, not even the investigators, had seen coming. While detectives were gathering documents from Karen's house, another team investigated the HOA office. Inside a dusty file cabinet hidden under stacks of old newsletters, they found a locked drawer. After forcing it open, they discovered an entire folder labeled "Special Cases, Confidential." Inside were printed screenshots, emails, handwritten notes, and even photos of children around the neighborhood, Lily included, all marked with comments like "constant noise, nuisance, repeat offender, danger to standards." But the worst part wasn't Karen's handwriting. It was the second set of handwriting layered over hers, HOA President Buckley. His bold red ink circled Karen's notes, approving them with words like, "agreed, support enforcement, handle swiftly, do what is needed." It felt like ice water poured down my spine. Karen hadn't been the only monster. She had been enabled, supported, maybe even guided. The president of the HOA, the man who pretended to be neutral, who publicly lectured us about community unity, who pretended he didn't know why Karen was so extreme, had been behind her the entire time. When Detective Harris showed me the documents, I felt rage flaring through me so intensely I had to sit down. "He backed her," she said quietly, flipping pages filled with Buckley's checkmarks and signatures. "In some cases, he encouraged her." And that wasn't even the worst part. The detectives then uncovered digital backups, emails between Karen and Buckley discussing stricter methods, deterrence, and putting pressure on problematic families. One email from Buckley to Karen read, "If parents refuse to follow rules, target the kids. It's more effective." My stomach churned. My hands shook. I had to hold on to the edge of the table to stop myself from collapsing. Everything made sense now: why the HOA dismissed complaints, why Karen always acted untouchable, why consequences never reached her. She hadn't just been acting alone, she had been carrying out orders. But then came the moment that flipped the entire investigation on its head. When detectives confronted Buckley, he denied everything at first. "Those signatures are forged," he insisted, sweat dripping from his hairline. "Karen is unstable. She probably wrote those herself." But he didn't know something. While the detectives were questioning him, another officer found something else hidden inside his office walls, literally. Behind a loose panel was a small lockbox containing a flash drive. On it, a secret recording, audio of a meeting between Karen and Buckley just 2 weeks before the attack. Their voices were crystal clear. Karen said, "The girl is always outside. She disrupts the look of the neighborhood." And Buckley replied, "Then do what you always do. Handle it. But don't leave evidence." Karen laughed, and said, "I know exactly what to do." Buckley answered, "Good. Just make sure the board doesn't have to step in." When detectives played the audio for him, Buckley's composure cracked like a shattered mirror. His face drained of color. His voice trembled. I didn't know she'd go that far," he stuttered. But the detectives were done listening to lies. They informed him he was being detained for conspiracy, child endangerment, evidence tampering, and aiding an intentional assault. When the police escorted him outside in handcuffs, the neighborhood erupted. People stepped out of their homes, whispering, gasping, filming. For years, Buckley had dictated the rules, the punishments, the fines. Now he stood exposed, a coward hiding behind paperwork and power. But the shock wasn't over yet. As officers went deeper into the files, they uncovered even more horrifying truths. Karen and Buckley had worked together to remove play areas, restrict kids from sidewalks, and even push out families with children by issuing noise violation fines for normal activities. They weren't maintaining standards. They were trying to eliminate kids from the neighborhood entirely. And my daughter, my sweet Lily, just happened to be their biggest case. The detectives called me in to listen to one final recording, and it shattered something inside me. Buckley said, "That girl is outside every day. Handle it quickly. We need to discourage the family before more kids start playing there." And Karen replied, "Oh, don't worry. I've handled brats before." That was the moment I realized it. Karen's attack had been organized. Encouraged. Even expected. Not a spontaneous outburst of cruelty, but a planned intimidation tactic that turned into a nightmare. The emotional clash came later that evening when I walked back to the neighborhood with the lead detectives. Karen was standing in her driveway, still wearing her royal blue HOA uniform like she thought it protected her, screaming at officers to get off her property. When she saw me, her face twisted into something demonic. "This is your fault," she shrieked. "If you people raised your children properly," her sentence was cut short as Detective Harris stepped forward. "Karen, turn around. You are under arrest for aggravated assault, premeditated harm, child endangerment, conspiracy, and destruction of evidence." The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. As they walked her toward the patrol car, she turned her head toward me and hissed, "They promised they'd back me." He promised. And that was it, the final confirmation. Karen was a weapon. Buckley was the one who loaded her. The entire community watched in stunned silence as both of them, once the most feared figures in the neighborhood, were driven away. Some neighbors cried. Some cheered. Some apologized to me. But everyone agreed on one thing: the truth had been uglier, deeper, and more dangerous than anyone ever imagined. And as I stood there under the streetlights, the neighborhood finally breathing freely for the first time in years, I whispered to myself, now everything changes. Because the twist wasn't just that Karen had help. The twist was that the monsters had been living among us, leading us, controlling us. And now, finally, their reign was over. When Karen and Buckley were taken away in handcuffs, the neighborhood seemed to exhale for the first time in years, like the entire community had been trapped underwater, unable to breathe, and now the surface had finally broken. But even with the sight of those police cars disappearing down the road, the journey toward justice was far from over. Over the next several weeks, detectives continued gathering evidence, interviewing neighbors, reviewing past complaints, and piecing together the full scope of the HOA's corruption. Every new revelation was worse than the last: fines issued illegally, threats recorded, children targeted, parents intimidated, and hundreds of dollars squeezed out of families for violations that didn't even exist. When the district attorney saw everything, he didn't hesitate. Karen was officially charged with aggravated assault, premeditated harm, child abuse, child endangerment, and conspiracy, while Buckley faced charges of conspiracy, aiding and abetting, evidence tampering, and misconduct under HOA authority. The courtroom on the day of the hearing was packed. Neighbors filled every seat, some holding hands, some trembling with emotions they'd buried for years. Karen entered wearing shackles and a faded jumpsuit instead of her royal blue HOA uniform, and for the first time, she looked small. Fragile. Powerless. She scanned the room, searching for the control she once held over everyone, but there was nothing left for her to command. Buckley shuffled in shortly after, looking equally broken, his eyes darting around the room as though hoping to find someone who still believed in him. No one did. Not anymore. When the prosecutor played the witness videos, the room went silent. Seeing Lily's tiny body collapsing under that cascade of boiling water made mothers gasp and men stare hard at the floor. Karen looked away the entire time, her jaw clenched, but her eyes refusing to meet the truth she had created. The audio recordings came next, her voice, cold and remorseless, Buckley's voice, calculated and approving, the two of them planning and validating cruelty like it was administrative paperwork. Even the judge shook her head. "This," she said sternly, "is among the most disturbing cases of abuse of authority I have ever seen." The sentencing was swift. Karen received a long-term prison sentence with no chance of early release, and Buckley received several years as well, along with a lifetime ban from serving in any HOA or community leadership role. When the gavel struck, sealing their fate, a soft wave of relief washed through the courtroom, and for the first time, I felt something lift off my chest, a crushing weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying since the day Lily screamed. But justice wasn't just handed down inside the courtroom, it rippled through the neighborhood. The HOA board was dissolved entirely, a temporary management company was brought in, and within weeks, a democratic election was held for a new board, one built on transparency, fairness, and community protection. Parents who had stayed quiet for years finally reclaimed their voices. New rules were passed, not to restrict children but to safeguard them. No child could ever be fined or targeted for simply playing, laughing, or existing. No resident could act as an enforcer without proper authorization, and all future HOA decisions had to be approved by a community vote. The neighborhood transformed. Sidewalk chalk returned in bright, joyful colors across driveways. Kids rode their bikes freely again. Parents gathered outside in groups, talking, supporting one another, finally unafraid. And for the first time, the sound of children playing, once the target of Karen's hatred, became the heartbeat of the community. As for Lily, her healing was slow, painful, and emotional. The burned scars, though treated with care, would take time to fade, but her strength amazed me. She began physical therapy, and each small victory, lifting her arm higher, stretching her fingers wider, drawing with crayons again, became a celebration in our home. The first time she giggled after weeks of silence, I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Her therapist called her a little warrior, and she was right. Lily fought every day to reclaim her childhood. Emotionally, the fear took longer to heal. She hesitated to go outside at first, clinging to me whenever she stepped onto the porch. But slowly, day by day, she found courage again. And the moment she asked, "Daddy, can I draw on the sidewalk?" was the moment I realized she was reclaiming the world Karen tried to steal from her. I sat with her on the concrete, handing her chalk as she drew a huge yellow sun with rays stretching to the edges of the driveway. For the first time in months, she smiled without fear. I felt my throat tighten as I watched her, realizing how close I came to losing her innocence, her joy, forever. Standing there, I understood something important. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about rebuilding. Healing. Standing stronger than before. And as I watched my daughter draw, surrounded by a neighborhood that now protected her instead of threatening her, I felt a powerful sense of resolution wash over me. What Karen did left scars, but those scars became proof, not of weakness, but of survival. Proof that my daughter was stronger than the cruelty aimed at her. Proof that a community could rise when fear was replaced by courage. Proof that justice, when it finally arrives, heals in ways punishment alone never can. And when I looked at Lily, brushing chalk dust from her fingers, I whispered a promise to myself: no one will ever hurt her again. Not on my watch. Not in this neighborhood. Not anywhere. Because this time, the neighborhood wasn't ruled by fear. It was ruled by unity, truth, and the determination to protect its children forever. Thank you for watching this story to the end. My daughter's journey reminds us all that no child should ever suffer because of someone else's cruelty. Before you go, tell me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far our community reaches. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss more real, emotional stories like this. Together, let's stand for truth, justice, and the protection of every child.